Hello everyone, welcome to this new lesson in the course. In this lesson, we will continue with image hover effects, and we will create this nice hover effect. You can see when I hover over the image, it scales down to 0 until it disappears, and the background scales up while rotating, and all the elements fade in nicely. So let's create this effect. You can see we have all the styles from the previous lessons that are responsible for locating the elements in their positions, like so. Alright, we will start adding the styles for this lesson right here. I will target the div with the class of container. Then I will add background color, this gray color, then border, 10 pixels, solid, and white. Then I will go back and target the image inside the container div. And I will add transition, all, 0.5 seconds. Then below that, and when hovering over the container, I will target the image and add transform, scale, 0. And now, when I hover over the image, you can see it scales down to 0 and disappears. And when hovering away, it comes back to its original size. Alright, let's keep going. I will target the before pseudo element of the container that is this gray background. And I will change its background color to this green color. We saw that it expands while rotating, so we will add transform, scale, 0, rotate, negative 180 degrees. And finally, transition, all, 0.5 seconds. Then below that, I will say, when hovering over the container, I will make some changes happen to the before pseudo element. I will add transform, scale, 1, and rotate 0 degrees, so that it scales up from 0 to 1, while rotating back from 180 degrees to 0 degrees, giving us the effect we want. And now, when I go and hover over the image, you can see while the image is scaling down, the green background is scaling up and rotating, giving us this nice effect. But it would be better if the green background scaled up only after the image scaled down to 0. So we will add some transition delays to the green background when hovering over it. I will go back here and add transition delay, 0.5 seconds. And we added this value specifically because the transition duration of the image is 0.5 seconds, meaning that the image will be scaling down to 0 in 0.5 seconds. So the green background will appear after the image disappears completely. And now, when I hover over the container, you can see the image scales down to 0 first, then the green background scales up while rotating after that. We now need to make the text fade in as well, so I will go back and target the H2 element. Then I will add opacity, 0, and transition, all, 0.5 seconds. Then, when hovering over the container, I will target the H2 and add opacity, 1 again, so it will fade in nicely. And I want to do the same for the other two elements as well. So I will go here next to the H2 element and add the paragraph as well as the link. And I will do the same for the hovering effect. And now you can see the three elements are now hidden because their opacity is 0, and when I hover over the image, they appear again. But as you can see, they appear immediately. We want them to appear only after the green background appears, so we will add some transition delays to them. So I will go back, and on the hovering effect, I will add transition delay, 1 second. So when hovering over the image, these elements will wait 1 second. Then they appear. And I chose 1 second because the image takes 0.5 seconds, then the green background takes another 0.5 seconds. So both of them combined take up 1 second before they appear. That is why I used 1 second as a transition delay value for our three elements. And now, when I hover over the container div, you can see the image scales down first, then the green background scales up while rotating, and finally, the three elements fade in nicely. But when hovering away, you can see all the elements disappear immediately altogether. It would look better if the green background and the three elements disappear first, then after that, the image comes in and appears again. So, when hovering away, we want to make the image wait until the green background and the three elements completely disappear. Then, after that, the image should scale up again. In order to do that, we will go here inside the image selector and add transition delay, 0.5 seconds. And now, when I go and hover over the container div, then hover away, you can see the green background and the three elements disappear first. Then the image scales up again. So the image is just waiting 0.5 seconds, then scales up. But there's a problem. The image also waits 0.5 seconds when hovering over the container, but we want it to appear immediately. So we want it to wait 0.5 seconds only when hovering away from the container, not when hovering over it. We can do that by going back here and add transition delay, 0. So that means when we hover over the container div, the transition delay of the image will be 0, so it will appear immediately. But because we added transition delay, 0.5, up here to the image, it will work only when we hover away, and that is exactly what we want. So, when I go and hover over the container div, the image scales down immediately, then the green background scales up while rotating, and finally, the three elements fade in. And when hovering away, the green background and the elements disappear immediately, and the image appears after that, giving us the effect we want. So I hope you are now more familiar with the transition delay property and how it's used in different situations. Whether you want it to make your element wait on hovering only, or on hovering away only, or in both cases. So if you want to apply it only when hovering, you can do that easily by adding it in the hovering block of code. And if you want to apply it only when hovering away, you can apply it in the element code. Then in the hovering code, you can set it to 0, so it will be 0 when hovering only. So it will be 0 only when hovering, and when hovering away, it will have the value you applied in the element code. And finally, if you want to apply it in both cases, on hovering and when hovering away, you just add it in the element code.